I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would check her husband's phone. For 15 years, I trusted David completely. We had built what I believed was an unshakable life together, a beautiful home in the suburbs, 2 amazing kids, and a partnership that everyone admired. Our friends would joke that we were relationship goals, and I'd smile, believing every word of it. But trust, I've learned, is a fragile thing. It can shatter in an instant, and when it does, the pieces cut deeper than you ever imagined. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I remember because the autumn leaves were just beginning to turn, painting our neighborhood in shades of amber and gold. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when my phone rang. It was Tyler, our 14-year-old son. He was supposed to be at soccer practice. So seeing his name flash across the screen immediately triggered my mom instincts. "Hey, sweetheart. Everything okay?" I answered, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear while stirring pasta sauce. There was a pause. Then Tyler's voice came through, quieter than usual. "Mom, I need to tell you something, but you can't get mad at me for using Dad's iPad." My hand stilled on the wooden spoon. "What's going on?" "I forgot mine at home, and Coach wanted me to watch some training videos. So I grabbed Dad's from his car during break." "But Mom," his voice cracked slightly, "there were messages. I saw messages between Dad and someone named Melissa." The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. "What kind of messages, Tyler?" "I don't know if I should tell you over the phone. Can you come pick me up early?" 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car in the school parking lot, staring at David's iPad while Tyler waited outside, giving me privacy. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the conversation between my husband and this Melissa. At first, the messages seemed innocent enough: discussions about work projects, comments about meetings. David worked in commercial real estate, and I knew he collaborated with various colleagues. But as I scrolled further, the tone shifted. "Can't wait to see you this weekend. I've been thinking about our last trip nonstop." One message read, "You make me feel alive again. Coming home feels like putting on a costume." Another said dot, and then, the one that made my blood run cold, "I've been looking at apartments. Once the financial pieces are in place, we can finally start our real life together. Just need to get through the next few months without raising suspicion." I sat there in stunned silence, the afternoon sun streaming through the windshield, feeling like I was watching my life from outside my own body. 15 years, 2 children, a mortgage, family vacations, anniversary dinners. All of it suddenly felt like a lie. A performance I'd been giving while completely unaware of the real plot unfolding behind the scenes. Tyler got back in the car, his young face etched with concern that no 14-year-old should have to carry. "Mom?" I looked at my son, this beautiful boy who still believed his parents were invincible. And I made a decision. I wouldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not where he could see. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You did the right thing. But we're going to keep this between us for now, okay? I need to handle this carefully." He nodded, relief washing over his features. We drove home in silence, and with every mile, my shock began transforming into something else. Something sharper. Something that demanded answers. That evening, David came home at his usual time, whistling as he walked through the door. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day, helped our 11-year-old daughter Emma with her math homework. He was the picture of the devoted husband and father, and he was a stranger. I played along. I smiled. I served dinner. I discussed weekend plans, all while my mind raced, piecing together a timeline I'd been too blind to see. The late nights at the office that had increased over the past year. The business trips that seemed to multiply. The new cologne. The gym membership he'd suddenly taken seriously. The way he'd started keeping his phone face down on every surface. After the kids went to bed, I sat on our couch, pretending to watch television while David worked on his laptop beside me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to demand answers. But something held me back. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was survival mode. But I realized that confronting him now, with no plan and no protection, would be a mistake. So I waited, and I watched, and I began to investigate. The next morning, after David left for work and the kids were at school, I started digging. I went through our financial records, something I'd always left mostly to David since he was better with numbers. What I found made my stomach turn. Over the past 18 months, there had been regular transfers from our joint savings account to an account I didn't recognize. Not huge amounts that would trigger immediate alarm. 500 here, 1,000 there, but consistent. And they added up. Nearly $45,000 had been quietly moved out of our savings. I found credit card statements for a card I didn't know existed. Charges at expensive restaurants in the city where we never ate. Hotel rooms. Jewelry purchases. Flowers sent to an address I didn't recognize. I found a rental agreement for a storage unit across town, paid for with that same mystery credit card. And I found something else. A document folder tucked deep in David's office filing cabinet, behind tax returns from 5 years ago. Inside were printouts of apartment listings in Portland, Oregon, 2,000 miles away from our Connecticut home. Properties with price ranges that matched almost exactly what our house would sell for. There were also printed emails between David and a real estate agent named Marcus Chen, discussing the Portland market, the best neighborhoods for starting fresh, and David's timeline for relocation. The timeline mentioned finalizing things by December. It was October. I sat in David's office chair, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's double life, and I felt something I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a cold, clarifying rage. He wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to dismantle our entire life. He was going to take our money, our stability, our children's security, and walk away to start over with someone else. And he was doing it all while I cooked his meals, washed his clothes, and believed in us. I took pictures of everything. I documented every transaction, every message I could access, every piece of evidence. And then I made a call to someone I never thought I'd need, Sarah Chen, a divorce attorney whose daughter was in Emma's class. We chatted at school events, always pleasantly, never deeply. But I remembered her mentioning her practice, and I remembered the kindness in her eyes. I need help, I told her when she answered, but I need to do this strategically. I can't let him know I know. Not yet. Sarah listened to my story, asked careful questions, and then gave me advice that would change everything. You need more than evidence of an affair, she said. You need to protect yourself financially and establish documentation that will matter in court. Can you wait? Can you pretend everything is normal while we build an airtight case? Could I? Could I look at the man who'd betrayed me every day, sleep in the same bed, maintain the facade of our marriage while secretly preparing for war? Yes, I said. I can do whatever I need to do to protect my kids. The next 6 weeks were the most difficult of my life. Every morning, I woke up next to David and played the role of loving wife. I packed his lunches. I asked about his day. I attended our daughter's school play and our son's soccer games with him, presenting the united front of a happy family. And every day, while he was at work, I worked too. Sarah connected me with a forensic accountant who helped me trace every dollar David had hidden. We discovered he'd opened accounts in his name only, diverted bonuses I didn't know he'd received, and even taken out a personal loan against his 401k, all without my knowledge or consent. The total amount he'd squirreled away, planning for his exit, exceeded $90,000. I hired a private investigator. Within a week, I had photographic evidence of David's business trips that were actually romantic getaways with Melissa. I had surveillance photos of them apartment hunting together in Portland. I had recordings of conversations where they discussed their future, laughed about how clueless I was, and planned their escape. Listening to those recordings was like swallowing glass. The man in those conversations wasn't the David I'd married. Or maybe he was, and I'd just never truly known him. She's so busy with the kids. She doesn't even notice when I'm gone, he told Melissa during one captured conversation at a restaurant. Honestly, it's been easy. She trusts me completely. Always has. My trust, my love had become his weapon against me. But I wasn't the same woman I'd been 6 weeks ago. That woman was naive. That woman believed in fairy tales. The woman I was becoming understood that sometimes the only way to survive a betrayal is to become smarter, stronger, and more strategic than the person who betrayed you. Sarah and I built our case meticulously. We documented every asset, every account, every property. We established a timeline of David's deception and financial misconduct. We prepared for every possible defense his attorney might use. And we waited for the perfect moment. That moment came on a Friday evening in late November. David had told me he needed to go into the office for a few hours to finish up some end-of-quarter reports. I knew, because my private investigator had told me, that he was actually meeting Melissa to sign a lease on their Portland apartment. While he was gone, I put the final pieces of my plan into motion. I'd already quietly moved half of what remained in our joint accounts into a separate account in my name, perfectly legal since they were joint accounts. And I was careful to document my reasoning for my attorney. I'd already secured a post office box where important mail could be forwarded. I'd already had consultations with the 3 best divorce attorneys in our area, which meant by conflict of interest rules David couldn't hire them. But most importantly, I'd already filed for divorce. Sarah had submitted the papers that morning. David didn't know it yet, but the clock was already ticking. In Connecticut, once divorce papers are filed and served, certain financial protections automatically kick in. He couldn't empty accounts, sell property, or make major financial moves without court approval. When David came home that evening, whistling and relaxed after what I knew had been a celebration with Melissa, I was sitting in the living room with a glass of wine. The house was quiet. I had arranged for both kids to have sleepovers that night. "Hey, honey," he said, bending to kiss my forehead. "Kids already in bed? They're at friends' houses tonight," I said calmly. "Actually, I'm glad we have the evening alone. We need to talk." I saw the briefest flash of panic in his eyes before he masked it. "Everything okay?" I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "Sit down, David." He sat, and I watched him carefully. The man I'd loved for 15 years. The father of my children. The stranger who'd been planning to destroy our lives. "I know about Melissa," I said simply. His face went white. "What? I know about the Portland apartment. I know about the money you've been hiding. I know about the storage you need. I know about every business trip that wasn't a business trip. I know everything, David." He started to speak, to deny, to deflect, but I held up my hand. "I've known for 6 weeks. And while you've been planning your exit, I've been planning too. You were served divorce papers this morning at your office. I'm sure you've been too distracted by your afternoon plans to check your mail." The color drained further from his face. You can't. I can. And I have. I've also documented every dollar you've hidden, every account you've opened in secret, and every lie you've told. I have photographs of you and Melissa. I have recordings of your conversations. I have evidence of financial misconduct that borders on fraud. I took a sip of wine, watching him process what was happening. Here's what's going to happen next. You're going to cooperate with this divorce fully and fairly. You're going to agree to a settlement that ensures our children's financial security and compensates me appropriately for the years I've invested in this marriage while you were planning your betrayal. And in exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges for the financial misconduct. And I won't make this divorce any uglier than it needs to be. Criminal charges. His voice cracked. You can't, David. You took out loans against marital assets without my knowledge or consent. You hid income and diverted marital funds. In Connecticut, that's not just grounds for divorce, it's potentially criminal financial fraud. My attorney is very clear on this. I stood up, looking down at the man I'd once promised forever to. You know what the worst part is? If you'd just been honest, if you just told me you weren't happy, we could have ended this with dignity. We could have separated amicably, worked out custody peacefully, divided our assets fairly. But you chose deception. You chose to plan this elaborate betrayal while I trusted you completely. So now you deal with the consequences of that choice. David tried to argue. He tried to justify. He claimed he'd fallen out of love years ago, that he'd felt trapped, that Melissa understood him in ways I never had. He tried to make it my fault. I was too focused on the kids, too boring, too comfortable. I let him talk. And when he was done, I simply said, none of that excuses what you did. You had choices. You made them. Now we both live with the results. The divorce took 4 months to finalize. David tried to fight, but his attorney quickly realized that we had an airtight case and advised him to settle. The final agreement gave me primary custody of the children, the house, and a substantial portion of the assets, including compensation for the money David had hidden. He also had to pay child support and alimony. The part that seemed to hurt him most wasn't the money. It was what happened with Melissa.c. Melissa had been planning to start this exciting new life with a successful real estate developer who was leaving his marriage for her. What she got instead was a man going through a very public, very expensive divorce, who'd lost most of his assets in the settlement, and whose reputation in our community was shattered. She'd signed a lease on that Portland apartment, expecting David to arrive with the proceeds from our house sale and his hidden accounts. Instead, he arrived with debt, obligations, and the emotional baggage of a man who'd lost everything he'd actually built. They lasted 6 months in Portland before Melissa decided this wasn't the adventure she'd signed up for. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, David is working a job that pays half what he used to make, living in a studio apartment, and making his support payments on time because he knows the alternative is worse. As for me and the kids, we're healing. It hasn't been easy. Tyler struggled with guilt for months, thinking he'd somehow caused his parents' divorce by telling me what he saw. It took many conversations and eventually some family therapy to help him understand that he did the brave, right thing. That secrets that hurt people need to be brought into the light. Emma took it harder in some ways. She was younger, more idealistic. The idea that her daddy could be anything less than perfect shattered something in her worldview. But slowly, with time and support, she's learned a more complex truth that people are flawed, that love doesn't always last. But that doesn't mean her father doesn't love her or that our family is broken. It's just different now. We stayed in our house, the one I fought to keep. Every room held memories, yes, but I refused to let David's betrayal take our home from us too. Instead, we made new memories. We painted Emma's room the purple she'd always wanted, but David had vetoed. We adopted a rescue dog Tyler named Justice, which I thought was rather fitting. We hosted Thanksgiving that first year, just the 3 of us. and created new traditions that didn't include the ghost of what used to be. I went back to work, something I'd put on hold when the kids were young. I found a position at a nonprofit focused on financial literacy for women. The irony isn't lost on me that my own financial naivety had made me vulnerable. And now I spend my days teaching other women how to protect themselves. It's meaningful work. It makes the experience I went through feel less like just pain and more like purpose. On quiet evenings, after the kids are asleep, I sometimes think about that Tuesday afternoon when Tyler called me. How my entire world tilted on its axis in a single phone conversation. How I could have handled it so differently. I could have confronted David immediately, let my emotions drive my actions, and potentially ended up in a far worse position, financially and legally. But I didn't. I learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait. Watch, prepare. That revenge isn't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet and strategic. Sometimes it's simply ensuring that someone who planned to hurt you doesn't get to do it on their terms. People ask me sometimes if I'm bitter, if I hate David. The truth is more complicated than they want. I don't hate him. Hate requires too much energy, too much ongoing emotional investment. What I feel is something closer to profound disappointment. He had the chance to be a good man, an honest partner, a father who modeled integrity. He chose differently, but his choices don't define me or my children. We get to write the next chapters of our lives ourselves. Tyler is 17 now, preparing for college. He's thoughtful and kind, and he treats his girlfriend with a respect that tells me he learned the right lessons from his father's mistakes. Emma is 14, fierce and independent, with a clarity about her own worth that I'm working to develop myself. They're going to be okay. Better than okay. And me? I'm discovering who I am outside of being David's wife. I'm dating again casually, carefully. I'm traveling places David never wanted to go. I'm taking classes, making new friends, building a life that's entirely my own. Some days are harder than others. Betrayal leaves scars that fade but never completely disappear. But here's what I've learned. Trust isn't weakness. Love isn't naive. What happened to me wasn't because I trusted too much, it was because David was untrustworthy. There's a crucial difference. I refuse to let his betrayal make me bitter or closed off. I refuse to let it teach my children that love always ends in pain. Instead, I'm showing them something more important, that when life knocks you down, even through circumstances you never saw coming, you can get back up. You can be strategic. You can protect yourself and the people you love. You can survive the unsurvivable. And you can build something new from the rubble. If you're going through something similar, if someone you trusted has betrayed you, please hear this. You are stronger than you think. Take your time. Document everything. Protect yourself. Don't let shame or embarrassment keep you from asking for help. And remember that their choices are not a reflection of your worth. You deserve honesty. You deserve loyalty. You deserve a partner who doesn't treat your trust as a weapon to use against you. And if you don't have that, you deserve the courage to walk away and build something better.